A wholesome workout session was playing on a phone that Chaeyoung was holding in her hand. Cha Jinwoo was reflecting on how, after lending his phone to the ultimate insider of their department, she had discovered the webtoon he had been reading. Chaeyoung had been teasing him about it, mimicking the dialogue from the series while laughing and saying how funny it was. The webtoon was titled The Pet Insider Girl, a name that already hinted at its content. She showed him the phone, pointing at the workout session video playing on it, and commented that it looked completely strange. Then, jokingly, she asked if he was taking revenge on her in his imagination. Jinwoo, sitting across from her and trembling slightly, tried to explain that it wasn't like that. Chaeyoung continued, saying that all of this must be because she had troubled him a little. He insisted again that it wasn't true, but she only smirked and warned that if she showed this to others, he would definitely become an insider too. She suggested they go and show it to everyone, but Jinwoo panicked and shouted at her not to. Inwardly, he thought that if anyone ever caught him reading The Pet Insider Girl, he would become infamous for the rest of his life. Chaeyoung laughed again, calling him a truly weird man. She teased further that he even took revenge in his imagination, making him feel embarrassed and frustrated as he repeated her words under his breath. She continued to tease, saying that he even knew how to throw tantrums at her. Jinwoo, exasperated, asked her not to tell anyone about it. Chaeyoung smirked and told him that he would have to listen to her from now on. When he didn't respond, she asked if he wasn't going to answer. Jinwoo finally agreed, to which she replied that he was a goy and even allowed him to hang out with any insider girl he liked. She asked if he liked that idea, adding that she liked it too. Jinwoo was caught off guard by her words and thought to himself that she looked stupidly pretty at that moment. A little later, he was back on his phone, scrolling through the comments under the same webtoon. He thought to himself that Chaeyoung acted freely and as she pleased, but despite that, she was still really pretty. He figured it suited her to be an insider after all. While he was lost in his thoughts and busy reading, Chaeyoung suddenly appeared behind him and asked if he was watching a wrestling film. She sarcastically added that his strange interests must have taken over his brain and even asked if he was a chimpanzee. Jinwoo quickly replied that he was watching YouTube, not any wrestling movie. Chaeyoung, whose full name was Yoon Chaeyoung, known as the insider among all insiders and liked by everyone, stood beside him suspiciously. She asked again if he was really watching YouTube, saying that he was lying and demanding to see the screen. Jinwoo refused, telling her to forget it. He thought about how she was already quite famous on TikTok and YouTube, which made her all the more bold. She tried to snatch his phone, insisting on seeing whatever he was hiding. Jinwoo stopped her and pointed at the screen, saying that the person in the video was actually her. Surprised, he asked if she was aware of that. Chaeyoung leaned closer, whispered in his ear, and admitted softly that it was indeed her, but added with a sly smile that the video was just too entertaining. He felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him the moment she mentioned that, his face slightly turning red as he avoided meeting her eyes. Chaeyoung, noticing his reaction, smirked mischievously and told him to slide over to the next video, saying that it was her lingerie lookbook. Her tone was teasing and confident, as if she was enjoying every second of his discomfort. Jinwoo, staring at her in disbelief, thought silently that she had been provoking him in this same playful and daring way ever since the very first day they entered the university. It seemed to be her favorite pastime to make him flustered. She continued to stand there, leaning slightly toward him, repeatedly asking if he truly wanted to see that video. Her expression carried that same mischievous glint, as if she already knew the effect her words had on him. Jinwoo's thoughts drifted back to the time right after their freshman welcome party. He could clearly remember that this habit of hers, teasing him, pushing him to his limit, and then laughing it off, had started around then. Looking up at her, he muttered that, yes, he did like it. As soon as he said that, Chaeyoung broke into laughter, shaking her head and saying that he was lying. She called him a weird man, emphasizing the words with mock seriousness. Then she asked sarcastically if he really believed she would ever take pictures of herself wearing just undergarments. With a knowing look, she added that while he might appear quiet and decent on the outside, deep down that was his biggest weakness. Her tone was playful, but every word carried a teasing sharpness that made Jinwoo shrink back in embarrassment. She called him a weird man again, clearly amused by how he reacted to her words. Jinwoo thought to himself that whenever he actually tried to reply seriously to her provocations, she would be the one to get flustered and lose her composure. Just then, two of Chaeyoung's friends appeared and approached her. One of them asked about her actions there, her tone filled with curiosity, while the other one said they should go out to eat together. Chaeyoung turned toward them, smiling casually, and said that she had just been talking to Jinwoo for a short while. Jinwoo watched quietly, thinking how ironic it was that someone like her had somehow discovered one of his most embarrassing weaknesses. Before leaving, Chaeyoung looked back at him and called out, inviting him to join them for dinner. Jinwoo shook his head and replied that he would rather go home instead. But Chaeyoung, unwilling to let him escape that easily, turned to her friends with a mischievous expression and said loudly that Jinwoo liked reading webtoons. She asked them if they wanted to hear more about that, her words dripping with playful provocation. Jinwoo's face went pale, and in a panic to stop her from continuing, he shouted that he would come along after all. Chaeyoung smirked in triumph, clearly satisfied by his reaction, and asked if he liked hot pot. Jinwoo looked at her, realizing that she was still making fun of him, and thought to himself that she was seriously doing this just to mess with him. One of Chaeyoung's friends then asked if Jinwoo was really joining them, sounding slightly surprised, and mentioned that they had actually planned for only the three of them to eat together. Without hesitation, Chaeyoung introduced him, saying with a friendly tone that this is her friend Cho Jinwoo, and told her friends to greet him properly. Jinwoo, feeling awkward and self-conscious, gave them a polite greeting. Both of the girls smiled back and greeted him warmly, and one of them commented that it was nice to see he had such good manners. Even though they seemed friendly, Jinwoo couldn't shake off the feeling of discomfort. Inside, he kept thinking how unbearably awkward the whole situation was. Chaeyoung, trying to lighten the mood, suggested that her friends should just call him Jin instead. Both of them agreed without hesitation. Soon, the four of them left together and went to the restaurant. Once they sat down at the table, Jinwoo, still unsure how to act, said politely, enjoy their food before starting to eat. One of Chaeyoung's friends giggled and said that he had no dining etiquette, while the other gently brushed it off, saying that it was fine and asking if there was something wrong with him. Both of Chaeyoung's friends then held up their phones to take pictures of the food, framing the dishes from different angles. But Jinwoo, unaware of all of this, was already about to start eating. This made things even more awkward, and he froze mid-bite, realizing his mistake. Chaeyoung quickly stepped in to ease the tension, explaining that it was his first time in this kind of social setting. She then said that she was hungry too, and asked them to take the pictures quickly so they could start eating. Jinwoo sat silently, his energy draining with every passing moment. Inside, he thought that this situation was exhausting him completely. His mind kept echoing with the thought that he was so uncomfortable he felt like he might die. While they were still eating, Jinwoo's phone suddenly vibrated with a message notification. When he checked, he saw a message from Taryn. She was saying that she is really sorry and asking him if he could pick up her little sister, explaining that she is on duty today and have a career counseling session with her teacher. She also ensured that she will make him something delicious when he come back. Jinwoo stared at the message for a while, his mind quieting down amid the noise of the restaurant. After reading it, he finally decided that he would go and take care of it. Later that night, when Jinwoo went over to Taryn's house, she greeted him with visible excitement and a bright smile on her face. She immediately told him that he had to eat something before leaving, saying cheerfully that she was making a sausage stir-fry for him. The aroma of the dish filled the small kitchen, and she looked genuinely happy while cooking. Jinwoo, however, shook his head and politely refused, saying that he didn't feel well after eating anything too spicy. Her name was Yu Taerin. She had been a close friend of his since childhood because their mothers had been good friends for many years. Standing in front of him with a slightly worried expression, Taerin asked softly if he was feeling sick and whether he wanted a glass of milk instead. Jinwoo reassured her right away, saying that he was fine and that she didn't have to worry about him. Still, Taerin insisted kindly that he should eat something before leaving, saying that she was only doing this out of gratitude. Jinwoo smiled faintly and told her not to worry so much about it. In his mind, he was thinking that he often helped take care of Taerin's younger siblings when she was busy, and over time, he had started to see her and her sisters as his own little sisters. Looking at her now, he even said aloud that they were all like his little sisters anyway. Taerin smiled shyly at his words, as if she wanted to say something more, but stopped herself midway. She simply murmured, but before pausing again, glancing toward the kitchen. Jinwoo looked at the clock and said that it was getting late, so he should leave soon. Taerin, however, quickly told him that her mother had called and said she would be home late that night, so Jinwoo could stay a bit longer if he wanted. Jinwoo hesitated for a moment, but then thought again that her family really was like his own. He smiled faintly and replied that he still had some university matters to think about, so he would need to go home and take care of those. As he stood up to leave, Taerin called out his name suddenly. When he turned back, she told him, with determination shining in her eyes, that she had decided to apply to his university. She explained that during her career counseling session earlier that day, she made up her mind to aim for admission there, and she was going to make sure she passed and became his junior. Surprised, Jinwoo asked if she was really serious about that and reminded her, half jokingly, that freshmen at his university often got punished during initiation week. Taryn's eyes widened as she asked if that was actually true. Jinwoo laughed and teased her, saying if he tells her that it's true, asking her if he is still going to apply after that. Taryn smiled with a confident grin and replied that she was going to do it anyway. Later, after leaving her house, Jinwoo returned home and sat down in front of his desk, opening his laptop. He went straight to the Webtoon gallery site he often visited and began typing a post. He wrote that he got outed by a girl in his own university today for reading The Pet Insider Girl. Jinwoo stared at the flood of replies, scrolling through them with a blank expression. As he leaned back in his chair, he thought to himself that there were so many universities he still needed to consider. The next day, while he was walking through the university corridor, Chaeyoung appeared in front of him again. With her usual bright and confident tone, she asked if he had another class after the one they had just finished. Jinwoo replied that he didn't. Her face lit up instantly as she said that it was perfect and suggested that they should go to the coin karaoke. She tilted her head slightly and added playfully that if not karaoke, he could come along to the PC room instead. Jinwoo could already sense that, whatever her plan was, she wasn't about to let him go easily that day either. He was saying that he did not really enjoy going to a coin karaoke, as it was not the kind of place he liked to spend his time in. However, she grabbed his hand gently and urged him to forget about everything else that was bothering him. And before he realized it, they had already stepped inside the coin karaoke room. Once they got inside, she started singing a few songs enthusiastically, completely immersed in the rhythm and melody. He sat there quietly, observing her with careful eyes. His gaze moved from her outfit to her expressions and realized she had not wear any undergarment, and then up to her eyes. He started wondering whether she had noticed him secretly watching her, as she seemed to glance back at him for a brief moment. When she finished her song, she received a high score on the screen, and he thought to himself that she was becoming even more bold and confident after realizing how easily he got flustered. While sitting there, she began scratching her thigh lightly and mentioned that perhaps a mosquito had bitten her. Then, turning to him, she asked him to check if there was really a mosquito bite there. He instantly looked embarrassed, his face turning slightly red, and he replied awkwardly that he didn't know because there was nothing visible. She frowned slightly, asking the reason he was acting so insincere and teasing him for not even looking properly. She then sighed and said that it didn't matter anymore, telling him to just forget it and stand up. As she stood, she took off her jacket, saying that it felt too hot inside the room. Seeing that, he felt even more awkward and uncomfortable, thinking to himself that she was definitely playing with him on purpose. He was sure she had done that intentionally, especially since she was already wearing shorts. Without much thought, she tossed her jacket onto him, telling him to hold it for a bit and urging him to move ahead quickly. He looked frustrated and slightly annoyed by her casual attitude, but she just smiled and said that this was still better than spending time alone at a PC room. He gave a small nod and agreed with her, and she replied that she felt the same way too. After a moment, she called out to him again, saying that to commemorate his first time coming to a coin karaoke with a girl, they should take a selfie together and post it on Instagram. He looked at her in disbelief and told her that he really didn't like that idea, adding that he had never even used Instagram before. She smirked playfully and said that he was becoming quite clever lately, but warned that if he didn't listen to her, he would have to deal with the consequences. Feeling cornered, he sighed and said fine, agreeing to take the picture. She then told him to stop holding her jacket and just wear it himself. Taking out her phone, she asked him to come closer for the selfie, jokingly saying that he was not some kind of superconductor that needed to keep such a big distance from her. He felt uncomfortable with her sudden teasing tone and became suspicious about her true intentions, thinking that her behavior was becoming increasingly annoying and confusing. After snapping the selfie, she added a few cute stickers to the photo and laughed as she showed it to him, teasing him about how awkward and funny his face looked. Then, without any hesitation, she uploaded the selfie to Instagram, writing in the caption that she had taken the picture at the coin karaoke. To his shock, she also mentioned him in the post, tagging him as her boyfriend. He was completely taken aback and thought that there was absolutely no need for her to go this far just to tease him. A little fun was fine, but this felt unnecessary. Soon after, her post began receiving numerous comments, and he stared at the screen, feeling uneasy about the situation and unsure to think anymore. That night, he sat alone on his bed, replaying the entire incident in his mind. He told himself that it probably didn't mean anything serious, yet despite that, he still ended up creating an Instagram account. When he opened it and looked at her post, he was shocked to see himself clearly tagged as as her boyfriend for everyone to see. Just as he was trying to process everything, a message suddenly appeared on his phone from Kahaeyoung saying that she wanted to have some ice cream together. He stared at the message for a while, feeling confused and wondering if everything he had seen and experienced with her earlier was truly genuine or just another one of her unpredictable moods. However, after a few days had passed, he finally became aware of the real reason behind her strange behavior and the things she had done. After a few days, the professor was standing at the front of the classroom, asking the students whether they had completed their research assignments. He then looked around the room and asked if anyone had any questions before the presentations were about to begin. The class responded collectively that they had none. The professor nodded and said that those who had already sent their work by email could proceed first, but for those who had brought their files on their phones, they should present using the screen sharing option. Chaeyoung turned toward him and asked whether he had already sent their file to the professor. He replied that yes, he had already messaged the file, and all she had to do now was read it and present it in front of the class. She responded with a simple, okay. Then he looked at her and asked if she was really planning to present it herself, adding that he could do it instead if she preferred. Chaeyoung immediately shook her head and said that since he had done all the PowerPoint work, she would not let herself be a free rider. He looked a bit awkward and muttered, in fact, this was exactly what free riding looked like. She smiled slightly and replied that that was all right, dismissing his remark casually. As he glanced at his phone, he thought to himself that he didn't really want everyone to see his private messages with Chaeyoung when he shared his phone screen during the presentation. While he was lost in thought, he noticed that she seemed busy on her phone, her attention fixed on something. As he looked at her quietly, he couldn't help but think to himself that she looked incredibly pretty at that moment. A few minutes later, the professor called out the next team's names, announcing that it was Chaeyoung and Jinwoo's turn to present. Chaeyoung placed her phone on the desk and walked confidently to the front of the classroom to begin the presentation. Watching her leave her phone behind, Jinwoo thought to himself that she had forgotten it. Feeling a bit uneasy, he decided that he should return it to her before the presentation started. As he picked up the phone and unlocked it, he was caught completely off guard. His eyes widened in shock when he saw the scene was open on her screen. It was a video of a wholesome cardio training session. The surprise didn't stop there, and as he looked closer, he realized that she had actually been reading a red manhwa. The sight left him stunned and speechless, unable to believe the scene he had just seen on her phone. He was extremely surprised when he saw the webtoon on her phone. His eyes widened as he stared at the screen, trying to process the scene he was looking at. He began thinking about the title of that webtoon, and as he focused more closely, he was able to read the name clearly. To his astonishment, it turned out to be one of the top 5 most popular webtoons. For a moment, he could not believe that it was real. As he glanced through it briefly, he realized that the story in the manhwa contained situations almost identical to the ones he had personally experienced with her. The resemblance between the events in the webtoon and what had happened between them felt uncanny. At that moment, it finally dawned on him that everything that had taken place made sense now, and he began to understand that this was exactly what she had wanted all along. While he was still lost in thought, she was standing in front of the class, speaking confidently to the professor. She suddenly mentioned that she had accidentally left her phone behind and then turned toward him, asking Jinwoo if he could bring it to her. The professor, who was preparing for the next presentation, asked if they could connect her phone now for the display. Chaeyoung replied without hesitation that, of course, they could. Hearing that, Jinwoo began to panic internally. He thought to himself that the connection process had already started and that he needed to turn off the phone's screen immediately before it was too late. But then he realized that even if he tried to switch it off, the screen might still display as it currently was once it connected to the projector. At that rate, everyone in the classroom would know what is going on her phone, and they would definitely misunderstand the situation. He grew increasingly anxious, imagining how the students would react. He thought that if the class saw whatever was on her phone, they would assume that she was an extremely strange person. In his mind, he pictured them gossiping and making countless comments about her being obsessed with strange online content, saying that she was always on YouTube or into bizarre webtoons. He could already foresee how chaotic it would become for her once everyone started talking. Meanwhile, the projector screen at the front of the classroom began showing the connection loading bar, and Jinwoo was horrified to see that it was already halfway done. The process was almost complete. At the same time, Chaeyoung kept calling out to him repeatedly from the front, telling him to hurry up and bring her phone. Feeling desperate, he made a quick decision. Instead of returning the phone to her, he abruptly turned toward the door and started walking out of the classroom, clutching her phone tightly in his hand. While leaving, he told the professor that he needed to use the restroom. His sudden behavior left the entire class confused. Everyone looked at him in surprise, whispering to one another, unable to figure out the situation that was going on. The professor frowned and asked the class if something was wrong with him, as his behavior seemed unusually strange. No one could answer. Meanwhile, Chaeyoung stood at the front of the room, looking visibly embarrassed as she tried to understand the reason Jinwoo had suddenly walked out with her phone. Then, in that moment of confusion, she quickly realized everything that must have been happening. She turned toward the projector just as it displayed the message device not found, indicating that the connection had been lost. Her expression changed instantly as she understood the situation completely. Without saying anything further, she decided to leave the classroom as well. The professor called out her name, trying to stop her, but she didn't respond and kept walking out. Jinwoo, meanwhile, was outside the classroom, feeling overwhelmed by the situation that had just happened. He thought to himself that the situation had gone far beyond a simple misunderstanding. It was no longer a one-sided problem anymore. It had turned into a mutually assured destruction for both of them. Chaeyoung hurried out of the classroom, her heart racing as she looked around the hallway, trying to find Jinwoo. She kept thinking that perhaps Cho Jinwoo, the quiet outcast, might have found out that she had been reading that embarrassing red comic. The very thought of it made her heart sink. The title of the manhwa alone was enough to make her feel flustered, and the possibility that someone, especially Jinwoo, had seen it made her stomach twist with unease. She looked around frantically, scanning the corridor and nearby classrooms to spot him, but there was no sign of him anywhere. The realization that he was nowhere to be found made her even more nervous. As she stood there, trying to catch her breath, she thought to herself that the entire situation felt like the exact plot of that comic she had been reading, as if life itself was mocking her. Just as she was lost in thought, a familiar voice called from behind. It was Yuna, a cheerful girl carrying a laptop in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. Yuna approached her with a curious expression, and Chaeyoung quickly asked if she had seen Jinwoo anywhere nearby. Yuna tilted her head and looked at her suspiciously before asking the reason she was looking for him. Then, with a teasing tone, she asked if Chaeyoung wanted to have another wholesome workout session with him. The comment completely threw Chaeyoung off guard. She blinked rapidly, confused and flustered by Yuna's words, unsure how to respond. Before she could even open her mouth to deny it, Yuna continued playfully, saying that it was such a shameful thing to be so eager, and then mentioned that Jinwoo had just gone into the student council room. Chaeyoung ignored the teasing remarks and simply muttered a quick thanks before walking off in the direction Yuna had pointed. But before she could get too far, Yuna called out again and told her to inform Jinwoo that the bulb's stabilizer had stopped working again, so he should take a look at it when he got the chance. Chaeyoung, still preoccupied with her thoughts, replied with a brief and continued toward the council room. When she reached the door, she pushed it open and called Jinwoo's name softly, her voice mixed with hesitation and irritation. Jinwoo, who was already inside, turned to look at her and asked with mild surprise if she was already there. Chaeyoung's face was full of frustration as she stepped inside, and without wasting a second, she demanded that he return her phone immediately. Once again, she asked sharply whether he had seen anything on her phone screen. Jinwoo, standing still and watching her reaction, calmly replied that while he respected other people's tastes, the kind of manhwa she had been reading was rather strange in his opinion. At that moment, Chaeyoung realized that he must have seen everything, and the embarrassment overwhelmed her completely. She clenched her fists and tried to hide her shame by accusing him in return. She said that he was no better since he also watched weird pet manhwas or whatever strange things he had on his own phone. Jinwoo didn't seem offended. Instead, he smirked slightly and said in a teasing voice that he actually liked the scene where the girl gets bitten by a mosquito inside the karaoke booth. That made Chaeyoung's embarrassment turn into anger, and she began shouting at him, telling him to stop talking nonsense. Jinwoo, however, didn't stop. He continued, saying that she was the one who seemed to be copying scenes from that manga in real life, probably hoping that they would somehow come true. Chaeyoung yelled back that even if that were true, there was nothing he could do about it, since he didn't dare to make it happen himself, and that he hadn't even done such a thing anyway. In response, Jinwoo looked at her calmly and said that he actually had done it. Shocked, Chaeyoung stared at him wide-eyed and asked if he was being serious. She admitted that she hadn't done anything like that, but he was claiming that he already had. A second later, Jinwoo started laughing and said that he was only joking, which made her frustration boil over even more. She shouted at him furiously, asking if he wanted to die for real. Jinwoo only brushed it off casually, saying that he had saved her anyway. Chaeyoung exhaled heavily, realizing there was no point in arguing, and said that she already knew that. She told him they should just talk things out properly instead of turning it into a fight. Jinwoo looked amused and told her that she should actually be grateful to him. She, still glaring at him, demanded that he give her phone back immediately. She also warned him not to try anything sneaky again, reminding him that she had caught everything on her phone last time. Jinwoo smiled slightly and said that he had done the same, implying that he had proof too. Chaeyoung, narrowing her eyes, warned that if she pressed just one button, she could expose him in the class group chat. Jinwoo replied coolly that the same applied to her as well. There was a tense silence between them before Chaeyoung finally suggested that they make a deal. She said that she wouldn't share anything if he didn't either, and asked if he agreed to that. Jinwoo looked at her and said that he didn't quite trust her words since she had already enjoyed herself, and he couldn't be sure that she wouldn't change her mind and betray him later. Then, holding out her phone toward her, he said that it was her phone anyway, and that he was already an outcast who had nothing left to lose. Chaeyoung looked directly at Jinwoo and asked if he was truly sure that he had nothing left to lose. Jinwoo, staring back at her with a calm yet teasing expression, replied that she seemed far more frightened than he was. She frowned and challenged him, asking whether he wanted to die together in the group chat by pressing the button at the same time. Jinwoo smirked and said that if that was the case, then they should press the button together when he counted to 3. Both of them started counting slowly, their fingers trembling slightly above their phone screens. However, when they reached the final number, neither of them could actually press the button. In truth, both knew deep down that they couldn't bring themselves to do something like that to each other. After a few seconds of silence, Chaeyoung let out a sharp breath and called him a coward, saying that she knew all along he wouldn't have pressed it. Inside, she admitted to herself that she had almost lost her composure there. Jinwoo, pretending not to care, said that it wasn't as if she had done it either, and added with a smirk that maybe he should just press it now so they could both go down together. Chaeyoung, startled, told him to wait, saying that their actions felt like a situation of mutually assured destruction. She told him to stop being reckless and suggested that they should negotiate instead. She asked him about his demands and whether he also wanted to experience the same things she had mentioned earlier. Jinwoo said yes, reminding her that she was the one who had suggested a negotiation in the first place, and if things were to be fair, he would also ask for something in return, something inspired by the webtoon he was reading. He explained that they could each make requests, and if one person refused, the other would have the right to press the button without complaint. After a brief pause, both of them agreed to that dramatic compromise. Chaeyoung said firmly that it was settled, but Jinwoo still looked doubtful, saying there was no guarantee that either of them would actually keep their word. He suggested that they should test their honesty first. Chaeyoung shrugged, saying whatever and agreeing to the idea. She mentioned that she already had a particular scene in mind and asked if he had one as well, thinking to herself that his would probably be nothing more than a harmless scene from that previous manhwa. Jinwoo asked if she was ready for it, and she told him that they should both say their chosen scenes at the same time. In his mind, Jinwoo decided that he needed to come up with something bolder, something that would surprise her, maybe even intimidate her a little. He thought that if his idea seemed more daring, she might back down first. Both of them began to count again, taking deep breaths as they reached the final number. Then, at the same moment, they both said aloud that what they wanted was to have a wholesome cardio training session together. The realization struck them instantly. They had both said the same thing. Their faces turned red, and an awkward silence filled the air before Chaeyoung blurted out in disbelief that he acted all innocent, yet he was clearly no better than her. Jinwoo quickly replied that she was the one who had claimed to be even more shameless than he was. Chaeyoung thought to herself that he had really turned her own words against her this time. Jinwoo, on the other hand, was thinking that if he showed any hesitation now, she would drag him into another round of teasing. Determined not to lose face, he kept his expression steady. Chaeyoung then said that if he was so confident, they might as well give it a try. Jinwoo, wanting to appear composed and fearless, thought that since he had already agreed, he should at least act like he wasn't bothered at all. Chaeyoung, still trying to sound firm, told him to give the training a try. Suddenly, Jinwoo reached out and grabbed her cannonballs. The unexpected action made her freeze, feeling startled and slightly scared. He laughed when he saw her expression, clearly amused. Chaeyoung glared at him and said that he should at least give her a warning before doing something like that. Jinwoo teased her again, saying that she had been acting all tough earlier, but now she looked nervous. Chaeyoung snapped back, accusing him of pretending to be confident just because he had touched her orbs, and challenged him to try again if he was truly that sure of himself. Jinwoo raised an eyebrow and asked if she really thought he couldn't do it. Chaeyoung hesitated, thinking that perhaps it would be better to let him figure it out on his own rather than keep pushing him. Jinwoo, meanwhile, was debating his next move, worrying that if he said anything foolish, she would only mock him again for carrying a inexperienced cardio card. Eventually, both of them began the wholesome workout session together. Deep down, Jinwoo wanted to become like the main character in a webtoon. After completing their wholesome workout session together, she told him that she was not going to marry him. However, she added that if they started going out, she might change her mind later. She explained that she had only said that because a character in the webtoon had done the same thing, and all he needed to do was ask her to be his girlfriend. Since they had just finished their workout session, she implied that it was already expected. He stood there looking quite confused before finally asking her to go out with him. She smiled and reminded him that they had agreed to follow everything that happened in the webtoon, so she couldn't help it. She had decided to date him. She pointed out that he was the one who had asked her out, while he, on the other hand, was thinking that he really wanted to have the upper hand in everything. After returning home, Jinwoo lay sprawled across his bed. He still couldn't believe that he was actually going out with Chaeyoung. It felt almost unreal to him. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. Yet at the same time, a strange nervousness settled in. He kept wondering if it was really happening, or if he had misunderstood something. As he held his phone in his hand, he found himself unable to send her a single message. Every time he thought about typing something, he hesitated and set the phone aside again. The whole situation felt somewhat awkward, and he thought to himself that it might feel like a contract instead of something genuine. A hint of embarrassment washed over him as he worried that maybe he was the only one feeling thrilled about it, or maybe if she didn't think much of it at all. The thought made him uneasy. He sighed and turned to the side, mumbling quietly that perhaps it would have been better if he had waited until tomorrow to ask her instead. The next morning, as he rode the bus on his way to the university, he unexpectedly ran into Taryn. She looked cheerful and lively, waving slightly when she saw him. After a brief moment, she looked at him with a friendly smile and asked if he wanted to have dinner together that evening. Without waiting for his response, she added that her mother had given her some money, specifically telling her to use it to eat dinner with him. Hearing that, Jinwoo smiled softly, a little amused by her words, and asked if that was really true. When she nodded, he said that in that case, he would contact her later once he finished everything he needed to do. As the bus approached the Bongham University stop, Jinwoo stood up to get off. Before stepping down, Taryn leaned slightly forward and told him not to buy dinner this time, insisting that it would be her treat. Jinwoo smiled again, saying that he understood and that he was getting off now. She nodded eagerly and told him to message her when he was done for the day, her face lighting up with excitement at the thought of sharing dinner with him later. Jinwoo gave a small nod before stepping off the bus and walking toward the campus gates. After arriving at the university, Jinwoo made his way straight to his classroom. As he entered, he noticed Chaeyoung sitting with her friends, chatting animatedly and laughing brightly. For a moment, Jinwoo simply stood there, watching her from afar. Then, as if sensing his gaze, Chaeyoung suddenly looked in his direction. Their eyes met briefly, and her smile faded as her expression shifted. Her laughter stopped, and a faint hint of shyness appeared on her face. They encountered each other's gaze for a moment longer, and Jinwoo was about to greet her when her expression unexpectedly changed again, this time turning into one of irritation or even mild anger. The sudden shift caught him off guard. He blinked, wondering about her expressions. Something about her mood felt different, and he instantly sensed that something was off. To avoid making the situation worse, he decided it would be best to quietly return to his seat without saying anything further. As he turned to walk away, he could overhear her friends whispering, asking Chaeyoung if something was wrong. She quickly shook her head and said that it was nothing, brushing off their concern and continuing the conversation as if nothing had happened. Jinwoo, meanwhile, sat at his seat, lost in thought. He couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that he might have done something to upset her. He sighed inwardly, thinking that if things continued like this, he wouldn't be able to ask her about their ongoing situation or even talk to her properly. After a few minutes, Chaeyoung turned back to her friends and told them that they would continue their conversation later. Then, without any hesitation, she stood up and walked toward Jinwoo's seat. When Jinwoo noticed her approaching, he froze in surprise. She stopped right in front of him, her expression still tinged with anger and frustration. Unsure to say, Jinwoo forced a small, polite smile and tried to ease the tension by asking if she had gotten home safely the previous night. For a moment, she didn't reply. She simply stood there, looking down at him, her silence making the air between them feel heavier. Jinwoo waited, then repeated his question gently, asking again if she had reached home safely. This time, she gave a short, simple response, saying only yes, without meeting his eyes. Jinwoo let out a nervous laugh, trying to make the situation feel less awkward. But before he could say anything more, Chaeyoung suddenly tapped her hand firmly on the desk beside him, the sound breaking the tense silence, as if she was about to say something important. He thought to himself that he did not believe he could bring himself to ask her whether they were actually dating. She was standing there looking at him expectantly and asking if he had anything to say to her. He answered that he did not really, at least not right now. Only, he added, under more ordinary circumstances. She warned him sharply that if he tried to talk to her today, she would kill him, which left him baffled as he could not understand the reason she seemed so angry with him for no reason. By the afternoon lecture, they were sitting beside each other, but her expression had not relaxed. It looked altered, tense, still angry and frustrated, and he remained unable to figure out the reason she had been behaving that way all morning. Partway through, the professor had something come up, so the lecture was canceled. The students began to ask whether classes were over for the day. Chaeyoung's friends suggested they go to the shop they had visited before, but Chaeyoung apologized, saying she had something she needed to do. Her friends accepted that and told her they would go on ahead, promising to see her tomorrow. Left alone on his chair, Jinwoo clutched his phone and felt increasingly worried. He told himself again that he could not even ask whether they were dating, let alone speak to her properly, and he convinced himself there was no way someone like Chaeyoung would ever date him. To steady himself, he scrolled through her Instagram and looked at the pictures on his phone. Then, unexpectedly, she appeared behind him and asked whether he was watching special cardio video on his phone. He was taken by surprise when she teased that he should take it easy on those films. He was astonished to hear her say that, then tried to explain awkwardly that because her ideal girl liked dancing, he had assumed something else. He admitted he could not understand the meaning of the ideal girl. She snapped that he did not even know her type, and mentioning a popular manhwa, asked if that was really the kind of person he liked. He corrected the name of the manhwa, and she dismissed the correction with a shrug, saying whatever, then pressed him, asking whether he had any idea that he was going to say to her. He replied that he thought she had told him not to speak to her. Her voice rose, and she insisted there was no way he could genuinely say nothing to her, and told him not to make excuses, asking bluntly whether he was serious about them. He replied that she had threatened to kill him, and he did not know anything to do, and he added that she had been angry all day. She contradicted him, saying she did not know and that she had not been angry. He asked about the thing she had come to say, and she answered that she simply wanted to ask him something. He said that was fine. He, too, had something to ask her and thought she should go first. She insisted that he should speak first, and after a moment's hesitation, he agreed. He looked at her for a moment, feeling his heartbeat quicken. Now that he was actually about to ask her, a wave of anxiety washed over him. He thought to himself that he had never felt this embarrassed before, yet he had already come this far and couldn't back down now. Gathering his courage, he looked at her again and suggested that perhaps they should both send each other a message at the same time. Whatever they had on their minds, they would ask it simultaneously through text. Chaeyoung agreed without hesitation. She quickly pulled out her phone, typing something with a focused expression. After a moment, she looked up and said that she was done, and at the same time, they pressed send. When they read each other's messages, both of them froze, eyes widening in surprise. Jinwoo's message asked whether they were actually dating, while Chaeyoung's message asked the reason he hadn't messaged her even after asking her out. The coincidence left them both shocked for a moment. Jinwoo blinked rapidly, then said in disbelief that she had been mad all day because he hadn't messaged her. Chaeyoung crossed her arms, replying that it was only natural. Normally, one is supposed to message the other person first. Jinwoo, looking a bit awkward, admitted that he hadn't been sure whether they were really dating. Chaeyoung immediately scolded him, saying that he shouldn't have been confused when he was the one who had asked her out in the first place. Jinwoo hesitated, then explained that she had told him to do that, just to copy what had happened in the manhwa. Hearing that, Chaeyoung raised her voice and said that she had waited all night for his message. Jinwoo's expression softened as he looked at her, wondering if she had truly stayed up waiting for him. The thought made him feel guilty, and he began to think that perhaps he had been overthinking the entire situation. Finally, he took a deep breath and said apologetically that he was sorry, admitting that he had misunderstood things. He promised that he would message her more often from now on. Chaeyoung looked slightly taken aback, then said with a hint of amusement that he had actually apologized to her. Jinwoo nodded, replying that he had indeed said sorry. She smiled mischievously and asked whether he truly admitted that it was his fault. Jinwoo nodded again and said firmly that yes, it was his fault. At that, Chaeyoung laughed lightly, and with a teasing grin, she said that since he had admitted it was his fault, she could say whatever she wanted to him now. Jinwoo looked at her, surprised, and asked if all of this had been part of her plan from the beginning, her words carrying a hint of playful challenge. Hearing that, Jinwoo felt a spark of excitement. The idea of doing their wholesome wrestling battle in the empty lecture hall made him grin. She looked at him with a mischievous smile and asked if he was really ready for it, reminding him that it was his fault after all. Jinwoo, still smiling, replied confidently that it sounded good to him. Chaeyoung nodded, saying with satisfaction that he seemed to agree. After finishing their wholesome cardio training session, Chaeyoung asked Jinwoo if he remembered an incident that had taken place when he was a freshman at the university. Jinwoo appeared confused and replied that he did not know anything about it. The only thing he remembered from that time, he said, was her dragging him into joining the student council. Chaeyoung told him to forget about it, sounding slightly dismissive. Jinwoo, still curious, asked her about it, but she responded that he should just forget it, calling him a loser. Changing the subject, she glanced toward the window and remarked that it seemed to be raining outside. She then asked whether he had brought an umbrella with him. Jinwoo replied that there was one in the cabinet. Upon hearing that, Chaeyoung said it was good and suggested that they walk to the bus stop together. Jinwoo, somewhat hesitant, asked if that meant they would be walking together under the same umbrella. Chaeyoung, teasingly, reminded him that he was the one who had said there was only one umbrella and mentioned that she would post a picture of them together on Instagram. Jinwoo quickly protested, telling her not to do that. As they prepared to leave, he began to feel as though he was forgetting something important, but decided that it probably wasn't worth worrying about. In reality, however, he had forgotten his promise to have dinner with Taerin that evening. After leaving the university, they walked outside together. She asked him to come a little closer, explaining that she could not see his face clearly from where he was standing. As they huddled together under the umbrella, he glanced around and noted that there were a lot of people nearby, making him slightly uneasy. She quickly reassured him, saying that they were not doing anything wrong. They were simply taking a picture together. Smiling, she began positioning her phone to capture a photo of them both. As the camera clicked, he hesitated and said that he really did not want to upload the picture anywhere public. She laughed lightly and pointed out that it did not matter because he was covering his face anyway, making the photo less revealing. He then asked cautiously whether anyone would know that he was her boyfriend, and added, almost shyly, that she was really pretty, and he felt embarrassed because he thought his outfit did not look good enough. At that moment, a comment appeared under her post. It read that she was beautiful and that her future boyfriend also looked good in his outfit. The words made him feel instantly shy, and he looked at her with a nervous expression, asking the reason she was laughing. She grinned and teased him, asking if he had secretly been checking Instagram and whether he had seen the comment calling him her future boyfriend. She insisted that he be honest and admit whether he liked the comment or not. Trying to steer the conversation away from the embarrassment, he pointed out that the bus had arrived. She responded with a playful tone, calling him her future boyfriend again, and laughed, remarking that it was amusing to see the corners of his lips curl upward. He begged her to stop teasing him and asked if she was really serious about her words that she had just uttered. Then, in a sudden playful motion, he grabbed her and started tickling her, asking in a mock-serious tone whether he had gone crazy or if he wanted to die. She burst into laughter, pleading with him to stop because the bus had already arrived. As she stepped toward the bus, she turned back briefly and asked him to message her first, and he nodded, promising that he would. Left standing alone under the umbrella, he watched her walk away, peering through the window of the departing bus. As he observed her, he thought to himself that he was indeed dating her, though he reminded himself that in their case, dating did not necessarily mean being completely official. His mind wandered briefly to their earlier interactions, reflecting on how natural and easy it felt to be with her. Suddenly, he heard his name being called from behind. Turning around, he saw Taerin standing there, looking a little concerned. She commented that he must have been extremely busy today, as she had tried calling him, but he had not answered. He quickly took out his phone, saw her missed calls, and apologized, explaining that he had been caught up in other things and had not noticed her calls. In his mind, he recalled that he had been preoccupied with a wholesome workout session with Chaeyoung earlier that day. Taerin listened carefully, then mentioned that she had been worried he might have forgotten the promise he had made that morning. His eyes widened in surprise as he realized that they had planned to have dinner together and that he had meant to contact her. He explained honestly that he had been a little busy with a friend. Curious, Taerin asked if the friend was the girl who had been with him just a while ago. He admitted that she was. Taryn observed that the two of them had seemed very close and commented that the girl was quite pretty. He laughed softly, agreeing that Chaeyoung was indeed a celebrity-like girl, and suggested that they now go for dinner. Taryn then asked if he had anything specific in mind that he wanted to eat, assuring him that the meal was on her. He reminded her that she had mentioned wanting hot pot the last time they had talked, suggesting that they could go for that. She agreed with him, and both of them settled into their seats on the bus. She remarked that the food they were going to have sounded really delicious. As he glanced at her, he felt a twinge of guilt, thinking that perhaps she looked down because he had ignored her earlier calls. Lost in thought, he momentarily got confused when he noticed that the next stop was. He reminded himself that this was their last stop and suggested that they get off and head toward the restaurant. As they walked together, Taryn continued the conversation, commenting that the girl who had been with him earlier was really pretty. She then asked if he knew about the model Cha Po-young. He was genuinely surprised to hear the name and listened intently as she continued, asserting that the girl looked very much like that model. He corrected her, clarifying that the girl she was referring to was actually Chaeyoung, not the model she had mentioned. Taryn was taken aback by this revelation. He admitted that he did not fully understand the term model, thinking that Chaeyoung was someone he had only seen on YouTube or TikTok. When they reached the restaurant, Taryn continued her questions, asking if he and Chaeyoung were friends. He confirmed that they were indeed friends. She then shared more information, telling him that Chaeyoung was originally a model and often appeared as a high school student model in fashion magazines. He realized for the first time that she had a modeling background. Taryn admitted that she had not known that they were friends and seemed genuinely curious. He explained that they were in the same department at university. Once seated, he called the waiter over and asked for the menu. While waiting, he reflected internally that it had been almost a year since he had met Chaeyoung, yet he still did not know much about her. He began sharing with Taryn the story of their relationship, saying that initially they had not been close. It was during a trip that they had the chance to grow closer, and after that, Chaeyoung started talking to him first, often joking around as if they were already familiar with each other. He recalled how she had dragged him into the student council and how amusing it seemed now. He laughed, noting that she often asked him to message her, and he found it endearing how she would sulk because she was clumsy. Taryn looked at him with interest and commented that she had never seen him so excited. She observed that he had never really talked to her about his friends before, and added that being a college student must be really fun. He smiled and expressed a hope that she would eventually get into their department as well. Under the table, Taryn gently nudged his shoes with hers, looking shy, and suggested that they talk about something else. She asked if he remembered a girl named Dayoung. He nodded in affirmation. Taryn mentioned that Dayoung had said she was going to participate in a swimming competition. As she spoke, she noticed that he looked genuinely excited whenever he talked about Chaeyoung. Taryn recalled the scene at the bus stop earlier and thought to herself that it was obvious the two of them had been flirting. Suddenly, their food arrived at the table. Taryn found herself overthinking and mumbling quietly, marveling that the competitor was a really beautiful model. She reminded herself that he had said his friend had no experience in big tournaments, and she seemed confused about the opponent's experience. Muttering again, she resolved that she just had to win now. He looked puzzled, thinking that she was still talking about her friend. Then she clarified, almost laughing, that yes, she was talking about her friend and that her friend was going to win the competition. After finishing their dinner, they stepped outside the restaurant and noticed that the rain had stopped. The streets were wet, but the air felt fresh, and they walked together, the earlier tension of the day slowly melting away. The next day, Yuna met Jinwoo in the student council room. She reminded him, her tone firm, yet slightly impatient, that she had asked him to fix the light. She paused for a moment and asked if Chaeyoung had told him about it. Jinwoo admitted quietly that Chaeyoung hadn't mentioned anything at all. Yuna shook her head, a small sigh escaping her lips, and explained that she had actually told Chaeyoung a few days ago. She added that Chaeyoung had been looking for him, her words carrying a mixture of annoyance and exasperation. Then, leaning slightly closer, she asked, almost teasingly, whether he had taken any money from her or anything else. Jinwoo hesitated for a brief moment, a nervous expression crossing his face. He replied carefully that, in fact, on that day, they had made a deal. Yuna's eyes widened in surprise, her eyebrows rising as she looked at him, clearly caught off guard. She asked him to clarify it. Jinwoo fumbled for an excuse, his mind racing. He couldn't, under any circumstances, tell her that their deal had involved exchanging cardio cards together. Yuna leaned back slightly and commented, with a playful edge to her voice, that the two of them were looking very suspicious. She added, as if brushing it off, that she didn't even care about it, though Jinwoo could sense a hint of amusement in her tone. He glanced at her, reflecting silently that Yuna, a third-year student on the student council, was someone he could probably summarize in just a few words. After finishing the task of fixing the bulb, Jinwoo stood up and announced that he was done and that he had to go. Yuna, however, stepped closer and called him back, asking him to come a little nearer. In his mind, Jinwoo described her personality in abstract terms, imagining her as a webtoon trainee, someone intensely focused, capable of obsession, like an old man completely absorbed in wholesome wrestling battles. Calling him by name, Yuna gestured to her screen and insisted that he look at it before leaving. Jinwoo, half jokingly, asked if she had been gaining weight. Yuna laughed lightly, shaking her head, and told him not to focus on her belly, but to pay attention to the drawing on the screen. She explained that she thought she had drawn something very pretty and beautiful. Jinwoo examined the screen and nodded, complimenting her politely, though Yuna immediately remarked that she didn't believe he meant it. With that, she told him to leave the room, her tone firm but playful. Jinwoo agreed and began to step away.